On a quiet winter night in England in late December of 1642, as Europe was torn by war, religion, and revolution, a fragile baby was born in a remote countryside village. No one imagined that this tiny, premature child would one day become one of the greatest minds the world has ever known, the man who would change the way we understand the universe forever, Isaac Newton. You may have heard of the falling apple, but do you know the story behind it? A story of solitude, of relentless curiosity, of a mind that refused to accept the boundaries of the known world. This is not just the biography of a scientist. This is the journey of a genius, a man who rose from silence and obscurity to challenge the heavens, to rewrite the laws of nature, and to lay the foundations of modern science. But every legend has a beginning, and Isaac Newton's began in silence, in solitude, and in a small English village. Isaac Newton was born on December 25, 1642, in the quiet hamlet of Worcester, Lincolnshire, England, just months after the death of Galileo Galilei. It was a harsh winter night, and Isaac was born prematurely, so small and weak that no one believed he would survive. But he did, and from the moment of his first breath, his life would be marked by silence, solitude, and a thirst for understanding. His father, also named Isaac Newton, was a farmer and had died before his son was even born. Widowed and struggling, his mother, Hannah Ayscough, remarried when Isaac was just 3. But rather than taking the boy with her, she left him behind in the care of his maternal grandmother. To young Newton, this abandonment cut deep. Throughout his life, he rarely spoke of his mother and never forgave her for leaving him behind. As a child, Newton was quiet, sensitive, and deeply introspective. He didn't fit in with other children. Instead of playing games, he spent hours building intricate mechanical models, sundials, windmills, and even tiny machines powered by running water. He would study the movements of the sun, sketch out inventions, and watch animals with intense curiosity. He was not a strong student at first. In fact, many teachers considered him average, even distracted. But all of that changed when he was bullied at school. Determined to prove himself, Newton began to apply his focus not to toys, but to books. He quickly rose to the top of his class, mastering Latin, mathematics, and classical literature. By the time he was a teenager, Newton had built a reputation for being a loner, but also a brilliant mind in the making. He kept journals filled with questions about nature, God, and the mechanics of the world. While others saw the world as it was, young Isaac already wondered what made it that way. From a quiet child gazing at the stars to a young mind on the verge of changing them, the next chapter of Newton's life would take him to Cambridge and beyond. In 1661, at the age of 18, Isaac Newton entered Trinity College at the University of Cambridge. At first, he was just another student from modest means. He worked as a servant to wealthier students to pay his way, and he often studied in silence, unnoticed by his professors. But behind those quiet eyes was a mind that had already begun to see the world differently. At Cambridge, Newton was introduced to the ideas of the great thinkers of his time: René Descartes, Galileo Galilei, Johannes Kepler. Yet, something in Newton refused to simply accept what others had written. He read voraciously, not just to understand their work, but to question it, to take it apart, and rebuild it through his own logic. But just as his intellectual journey was beginning, disaster struck. The Great Plague of 1665 forced the university to shut down. Newton, like many others, returned home to Worcester. Yet what seemed like a disruption would become the most productive period of his life, a time historians now call his year of wonders. Alone in the countryside, away from lectures and professors, Newton's mind exploded with ideas. It was during this time in isolation that he began developing the laws of motion, formulating the concept of universal gravitation, and laying the foundation for calculus, a form of mathematics so revolutionary it would ignite a centuries-long debate with Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Legend tells of a quiet moment in his garden when he saw an apple fall from a tree. While many dismiss it as myth, Newton himself confirmed that such a moment sparked a question that haunted him. Why do things fall? What invisible force draws them to the earth? Could it be the same force that holds the moon in orbit? In that time of solitude, Newton began to glimpse a universe bound by laws predictable, elegant, mathematical. He didn't just look at the stars, he sought to understand the very force that moves them. When Newton returned to Cambridge in 1667, he was no longer just a student. He became a Fellow of Trinity College, and by 1669, at just 26 years old, he was appointed the Lucasian Professor of Mathematics, one of the most prestigious academic positions in the world. The same chair once held by Stephen Hawking centuries later. From quiet studies to cosmic revelations, Cambridge was not just a place of learning for Newton, it was the launch pad from which he would reshape science itself. But Cambridge was just the beginning. What came next would not only define Newton, it would redefine science itself. After years of quiet observation, deep thought, and mathematical precision, Isaac Newton was ready to share with the world what he had discovered, and what he revealed would transform science forever. In 1687, Newton published what is often considered one of the most important scientific books in history, Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, or simply Principia. Within its pages lay the foundation of classical mechanics, a system of laws that explained how everything in the universe moves. At the heart of Principia were his 3 laws of motion, simple yet profound principles that described how objects move, accelerate, and interact. These laws didn't just apply to falling apples or rolling carts. They applied to the planets, the stars, and all matter in the universe. For the first time, motion was not a mystery, it was a matter of mathematics. But Newton went further. He proposed that every object in the universe attracts every other object, a force called gravity. And more than just naming it, he calculated it. He showed that the same force pulling an apple to the ground was also keeping the moon in orbit around the Earth and the planets around the sun. He called it the law of universal gravitation. Before Newton, the heavens and the earth were considered separate realms. The sky was divine and unknowable, but Newton shattered that boundary. He revealed that the universe was governed by the same laws, from the smallest pebble to the largest star. He unified the cosmos, and that wasn't all. Newton also revolutionized optics. He discovered that white light, long thought to be pure, was actually made up of many colors. Using a simple prism, he showed how light split into the colors of the rainbow, forever changing our understanding of vision, color, and the nature of light. To study the heavens more clearly, Newton built his own reflecting telescope, an innovation that solved the distortion problems of earlier lenses. It was smaller, sharper, and more powerful. That same design is still used in modern telescopes today. And in mathematics, Newton independently developed a new form of calculation that could describe change and motion, what we now call calculus. Though he and German mathematician Leibniz both discovered it around the same time, a bitter dispute would follow. Yet today, both are recognized as pioneers of one of math's most powerful tools. Across every field he touched: physics, astronomy, mathematics, optics. Newton left a mark so deep, it would take centuries for science to fully absorb his ideas. He didn't just ask questions, he built the framework for answers. A world that once seemed full of mystery was now, finally, knowable. As physicist Richard Feynman once said, if someone were to destroy all of scientific knowledge and we had to pass down just one sentence to rebuild it all, it would be Newton's laws. With the stroke of a pen, Isaac Newton unlocked the machinery of the universe. And science would never be the same again. Genius, however, does not rest. Even as the world celebrated Newton, his mind kept reaching until his final breath. As Newton's fame grew, so did his responsibilities. In 1696, he was appointed Warden and later Master of the Royal Mint in London. There, he applied his sharp intellect to economic reform, overseeing the great recoinage of Britain and cracking down on counterfeiters with the same precision he once used to study the stars. In 1703, he was elected president of the Royal Society, the most prestigious scientific body in Britain, a position he held until his death. And in 1705, he was knighted by Queen Anne, becoming Sir Isaac Newton, the first scientist to be so honored purely for his work in science. Yet behind the public recognition, Newton lived a deeply private life. He never married, he had few close friendships. He was known to be intensely focused, often absorbed in his thoughts for hours, sometimes days. His mind, forever curious, never truly rested. He continued to study until his final years, not only in science but also in theology and alchemy. Though modern historians debate the value of these pursuits, to Newton, understanding the universe was inseparable from understanding the divine. In 1727, at the age of 84, Isaac Newton passed away in his sleep. He was buried with great honor in Westminster Abbey, alongside kings and poets, a rare tribute for a man of science. His epitaph reads, "Here lies what was mortal of Isaac Newton." But Newton's legacy is anything but mortal. His work laid the foundation for centuries of discovery. Without Newton, there could be no Einstein, no space exploration, no understanding of physics as we know it. His laws still govern the rockets that launch into space, the bridges we build, the orbits we navigate, and the world we live in. Albert Einstein himself once said, "Newton was the greatest scientific genius who ever lived." He looked further than others because he stood on the shoulders of giants, but in truth, many now stand on his. Newton taught us that the universe is not chaos, but order. That it can be measured, understood, and even predicted. That behind every falling apple, every rising tide, every turning planet, there are laws waiting to be discovered. He revealed that truth lies not in myth, but in reason. And in doing so, Isaac Newton illuminated not just the heavens, but the very path of human understanding. But perhaps Newton's greatest gift ... wasn't in the answers he found, but in the questions he left behind. Isaac Newton didn't set out to become a legend. He was a lonely child, an ordinary student, a man who spent more time in silence than in speech. But what set him apart ... was a question. What? Why do objects fall? Why do planets move? Why does light behave the way it does? He asked, and he searched, and he never stopped seeking answers. In a world where so much felt unknowable, Newton showed us that even the universe could be understood, not through magic, but through reason, curiosity, and the courage to think differently. His story is not just about gravity, or motion, or light. It's about the power of the human mind, the quiet strength of those who dare to wonder, and the legacy that one person can leave when they choose to follow the questions that matter. So, the next time you look up, remember, the universe is not beyond your reach. It is waiting for your questions, just like it was waiting for Isaac Newton.